Kind of a concept of what growler hour is.
All right, guys. So at the end of the day, we're bringing people who are very knowledgeable in the real estate community, our local community especially, and coming and talking about current events. It could be about how they got started, where the case is. We've got some great guests here today, but really what it's going to come down to is we're just going to have a conversation, right? We're going to sit down, we're going to have a beer, we're going to talk to each other, really we're going to pick their brains, right? So this is they're the ones giving us the knowledge, but it all comes down to just a couple of guys having a beer. Right? And the people that are watching, they're going to be able to see what you guys would talk about if they're having a beer with you. So not only do we get to have a beer with you guys, which by the way are both from Bosque. One is the Riverwalker IPA, and the other one is the Rattler, which is very refreshing. So at the end of the day, we're going to have a good conversation. We're going to sit down and talk about it, and we want everybody to be able to see exactly what you guys would say. That's it. Just relax.
Cool. So today the real conversation is coming about the new rules and regulations that the MLS is being forced, and I use the word term forced, to implement, right? Because they have been designated as this NAR settlement as the policing authority. And that's, I think, unfortunate because that makes a organization that is supposed to be supportive kind of have some negative attributes of coming after us, right? And I know that we had a conversation during the board meeting where they had to discuss what the rules and regulations were going to come, that we all kind of said the same thing, that I think this sucks that we're coming after agents for something that, honestly, if you've been in the business long enough, this was already kind of settled 20 years ago, right? So guys, kind of give us kind of a concept. You just came back from Inman, and you were actually at another conference previous to that, correct?
Right, but before you go into that, I think the inception about almost like 2 years ago, when we sat down in the legislative meetings the very first time in DC, what people don't see or don't know in the rooms that we've sat into is that everybody in this room, down in DC had like, 15,000 realtors down on the hill 2 years ago, and it was first talked about. It was like this, all these conversations started, right? And then you speed up, you go, to this year, and we sat in a room where they announced everything, and you had everyone from all over the place, asking the questions about how this is going to work on August 17th. This was in May. Right. And Tony and I, we sat there, we looked at each other, it's like, okay, when they came out and said, okay, the MLS is going to be charged with policing written agreements for agents in your local area, we both looked at each other like, how
is it going to happen?
And we wasn't the only ones there. You have all the MLS presidents from across the country. Sure. We have all these other people across the nation that's having the same conversations we were about, okay, that's, and just once the feeling in the room, the tone in the room was like, that's dumb. Right. How are we going to do that? Right. And so from May to now, it's been something pressed upon us of how we're going to do this. Right. So I think that's something that's missing out of here, that a lot of people don't see that aspect of it, from 2 years to a year to now.
Well, and here we are. Everybody kind of misconstrued the process, right? We were at Texas Leadership here in El Paso, sitting at the DoubleTree, and I asked guys, when are they going to pull buyer rep out of the MLS? And they're like, oh, that will never happen. Like, they said that not but a year and a half ago when that Texas Leadership was sitting here. And I think that it came so fast on everybody, right? We've been in the business long enough to see whenever they did the change in CDs, right? From the HUD statement over into his closing disclosure. And we talked about how crazy that would be. We got through it, and it kind of was irrelevant. And I don't know if that's going to be the same way that this is, but I think, are we over-preparing? First off, that's kind of a question to you guys. Do you think we're over-preparing? And are these, Harvard came out, I showed you the other day, that they came out and said there's an estimation that they think 65% of the industry could be out of the business. These are scary numbers that people are tossing around.
See, I think the other thing that we have too is the perception, right? Like, because people coming out on Instagram and TikTok and all this other stuff, and X or Twitter, whatever it is now. Like, at the end of the day, there's so much misinformation, I think, and that's where you kind of have to come. You guys can really kind of come in and like, look, this is actually how it started. This is how it's going. This is why we're doing it, right? Because there's so many things out there that people just say it and we just assume it because nobody ever looks into something. You even watch the video and we just read the tagline like, I knew it. And that's what's so crazy about this. No one knows why. No one really knows what's happening. All we know now is there's going to be some crazy fines, and even then, how many people actually know that until they get hit with it?
You know what, when it comes to the NAR decision, that decision in the Missouri case, I mean, it came as a shock to all of us. You know, a lot of people felt like, you know, NAR threw us under the bus. You know, why did they come out and do the actual settlement in what they did in the terms? But you know, the other thing on this is being from the appraisal district with the 20 years I spent there, and there's a lot of litigation that goes on with lawsuits, obviously, over the property taxes. A lot of times, just because you settle a case in court, it's not necessarily an admission of guilt.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times it's what's cost effective. That's what you're looking at.
We've had that lesson.
And that's what happened here is just, you know, with NAR, it's, well, one, we got out real easy, those of us that opted in, which is El Paso, you know. They're picking up the bulk of it, the $418 million. We're not having to pay anything toward that. We did have to pick up our litigation, right, our attorney's fees. But we're getting assistance with that as well from Texas Realtors, which is really great. So in the end, this was the most cost-effective way to do it. If they would have not done this could have gone on for 10 years, 15 years, and the cost would have been astronomical.
For legal fees.
Yeah, for legal fees.
Well, and I guess that's the other thing too, right? It was so secretive, which it's kind of a double-edged sword. It kind of has to be, right? It's a legal issue, right? So that's why everybody gets so frustrated. But the weird thing is, no one's allowed to talk about it. Like you go down, you teach at the academy, and nobody's like, "Oh, we can't talk about this."
Right.
Even when we went to the big thing with Gephardt, we're like, "We're going to talk, but we can't ask this question. Won't answer that question." Right? So everybody gets so frustrated about it, and then again, like you said, you see these weird things on Instagram and that. And that's the problem with it, is it was so secretive, but it really kind of was a good deal for everybody. I mean, the best deal you could get.
Right, yes.
Put it that way. I mean, you listen to some of these podcasts, when these guys get in there and talk about it and explain why they made that deal, you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess I really appreciate it. I'm glad I'm not one of the guys that do over $2 billion or whatever it is.
Right.
But yeah, for the rest of us, we really kind of got hooked up.
Yeah.
But we don't know.
Right, and our MLS is very fortunate because we're under our association. So we were able to easily opt into it. There's a lot that weren't, obviously, the
Had a
MLS
protection of
outside of it, outside of an association, they were gonna have to go a different route. And that's where a lot of people have talked about, well, you know, this organization didn't opt in, why did you all opt in? Well, that organization or that MLS was probably, they were independent and not under an association.
Right.
That's why, it was a whole different terms of an agreement, and it was probably not cost effective for them, or they didn't feel it was fair to them.
Well, let's make sure that we kind of identify why we brought these two individuals. So Tony being our CEO of of Greater El Paso Board of Realtors.
The
Introduction a little late, right? And Mr. Ben Williams is our MLS president, right? So we brought you guys in because the other issue is that last week there was a training at the board that brought in a couple different people from different brokerages having conversations. And Ben, I know you teach your agents very well. I know that Andrew teaches the Haggerty agents really well. I know that I teach my team really well. But the downside is there was a lot of, and I don't want to pick on brokerages, but there's a lot of brokerages out there that are just in it for a quick buck and aren't giving the information out there. And what we're bringing you guys specifically in is to talk about the fact that there is a need to police. And that kind of went into play last week, and it's going to go into full effect in the next 2 weeks.
Or they need to educate, so it's going to be really painful.
So if you're out there listening, listen to this next part, because this is where it's going to really get down to. You need to have a conversation with your broker to make sure that you are, one, compliant, and two, not risking the opportunity of almost doubling your cost to be an agent.
Yeah, and you know, we're trying as an association MLS, we're trying to be proactive. So we're not going to depend on, you know, NAR's got a lot of information on their website, so does Texas Realtors. But anytime anything's come out, if you all are looking at our newsletters, we're constantly tagging or putting a link on there for you to go in and look and see what's going on. The other thing is that we had constant questions going back to what you were just saying about brokers, and some brokers are great at what they do, others not so great, is the new forms, with the new forms coming out. So, you know, Wednesday also on the 6th, we've got a special, we were able to work out, the president of the association and I, Shai Rodriguez and myself, we had a conversation with Travis Kessler, who's the CEO for Texas Realtors. So he understood, and he says, you know what, we'll be willing to do a Zoom with our legal department. So the legal department, it's been on our newsletter, please chime in on it, you gotta register for it, then they'll send you the link. So we're going to live stream it also at the association.
And we'll attach it to this, the registration to
Right.
this.
But it's going to be great information. You're going to hear it, for lack of a better word, straight from the horse's mouth. I mean, these are the people that designed and developed and made the changes to the forms for the Texas Realtors, and they work directly hand in hand with the lawsuit. So they're the best people that are going to give us the best information.
Well,
It's huge, but
And just to be clear, that's tomorrow.
That's correct. That's tomorrow. Yeah.
At 9:30.
I say the 6th, but it's
Yeah,
tomorrow.
it's tomorrow. So when you sit there,
know,
realtors don't comprehend unless you
Same,
say
we got a month to
tomorrow.
get ready for this.
It's within
Right,
24
right.
hours,
Yeah,
right?
right.
You know what I'm saying? So 9:30, so people.
So let's get down to brass tacks, guys. This is now 2 fines that are potentially going to be imposed for 2 different things. So Ben, you kind of gave a great explanation, I think, in the board meeting. Let's kind of get that explanation of what these look like and what they are.
Okay, so, man, I feel like I'd be just remiss not to say and talk about the conversations we had when we
100%.
made the decisions. So, we looked at this from every angle. We looked at this from an angle from the part-time person's probably working every day, not knowing what's going on, don't even know there has been a lawsuit.
Yep.
Right? There's people that's out of the 3,200 subscribers and participants that we have, somebody's out there that doesn't even know this is going on. We looked at that aspect.
I think there's a lot.
We looked at the aspect from, hey, what risk with policing this, what risk we take if that person is still on the other side of this violated, not having a written agreement, or place compensation inside the MLS. That we went to that extent, and we had several conversations.
So compensation MLS, right? You're talking in the remarks section or all these versions of TikTok and Instagram where they're saying, "Oh, I'm going to put it here," or I'm going to write it into the terms, right?
Correct.
And, yeah, that's the
Confidence
weirdest
remarks.
thing, right? If you're allowed to do this, but you're not allowed to do this.
Well, we talked
I'm
about
kind of outlining that right
We
now.
outlined that, all right? So to clarify, not only the MLS, but any of the
Distributors.
distributors, IDX fees, this feeding from it. So we talked about that as well. So the conversation really developed, we end up being back with guidance from attorneys.
Correct.
All right. And so when we got guidance from attorneys, okay, hey, look, if you do have this person that violates these rules and we're supposed to be policing them, it was more about making sure that, first we had something in place to enforce the rule. All right. If we had something in place to enforce the rule that deterred somebody to do it, it wouldn't put the association at risk or subject to further action from NAR.
Correct.
So we had to think about that, and we really broke that down. All right, we associated this with probably just with a written agreement. We're probably associate that with not having a list agreement. So we kind of looked at that from that perspective, and then we looked at the compensation. 99% of all the violations inside the MLS could be mistakenly done. All right, that's true. I mean, we've talked about clear cooperation before.
Yeah.
We've talked about all this stuff that could be mistakenly done, truthfully. All right, and then with clear cooperation, we had the tier 2 fine, and it was associated with that for the $1,000. Well, we looked at this one for its compensation inside the MLS, based on if someone put, hey, percentage or whatever that is, 2 apples, 3 apples, whatever the case would be, put incentive, put a bonus, whatever this looks like, that would have to be intentionally written in. If we've dropped the field and you can't no longer put it in there, then someone has to intentionally write it in and really try to violate the rule purposely. And with the intentions of, hey, I'm trying to do this, all right? So we looked at that from that angle versus even clear cooperation where they could mistakenly be done. We've talked about this, with signs going out early and, your sign guy is good, my sign guy is a piece of crap, and he puts the sign
Our
out
sign guy
there.
is pretty good.
Whatever this looked like. We said, okay, look, let's look at this from that perspective and what risk does it place the association at, right? And that's how we came to be to put it at a tier 2 fine based on attorneys, based on all that, based on all this other stuff, and based on the risk.
You have to have some accountability. Listen, if you slap somebody on the wrist, they're going to continue to do it. There are some people in the MLS that will notoriously commit to the fine just to do the fine and get away with the action.
Correct.
And That's dangerous because that can set the MLS, and I think that's the part that people are missing. This is not the MLS coming after people. This is the MLS protecting the integrity of the MLS.
Yeah, that's something that I wanted to touch on. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're fine.
So, first of all, this decision didn't come easily.
Yeah.
This was, almost a 2-hour meeting, easy, 3-hour meeting. So it didn't come easily because they felt, wow, how is this fair, how is this not? But here's the reality. The reality is, this is all starting up for August 17th, right? We're gonna be a little proactive and start it tomorrow as of August 6th. So it gives people time before the actual August 17th date. But this isn't over until November 26th. So, a lot can happen still. And it was already happening even up to this date. There was changes coming through. But here's the reality. The reality is we're under the microscope. And these attorneys are out there. When they got that decision in Missouri, it was a copycat lawsuits across the nation.
Yeah.
And they just saw it as a cash cow, man. The attorneys were like, okay, man, here we go. There's blood in the water.
It's amazing
Let's
how
go for it.
attorneys fees work. The one thing
you
you'll
just
see. Sure.
said. So setting in, I just came back from Emmons on freaking what's today?
Thursday. You got back Thursday because
Got
we were
back
trying to do this
It's
Friday.
not Thursday.
So got back from Emmons on Thursday, and I got to sit in the room where the NAR president, Mr. Sear, got to talk. And I'm going to use my language here, my interpretation, how I sat in that room and how I unpack what he was saying. One, he came off very clear about, hey, his actual words was, don't be cute and try to work around
To
it.
circumvent the system.
He said that on stage, right? That was verbatim, all right? Two, he said, okay, you don't want to be the person getting caught, all right? So you have the NAR president sitting there putting that tone out there. And I say that to say that I walked away with like, okay, hey, look, from August 17th to November 26th, what he ended up echoing through the whole audience was like, okay, look, we're under a microscope. We have not got clear guidance from DOJ of how this is going to play out.
Right.
Okay. And we need to
Make
make sure
example. They're gonna make
that
examples.
we have some rules enforced and not get caught and all this other stuff. And he was very clear about that. So to sit in that room and see that tone out there, I was like, okay, I walked away. It was like, okay, hey, look, this has been, hey, somebody's going to be on the naughty list and get an example made of them. I just don't want our association to be associated with that, right? So, and I think that's, as I was sitting there Thursday and stuff like that, it's like, well, I felt like we made the right decision to put it as a tier 2 violation. Right, after the fact. So,
And it's a dangerous game, guys. Listen, at the end of the day, this is a conversation that says, hey, listen, if you're going blatantly to break the rule, right? Everybody's been talking about, well, I'll show it this way, or I'll show it that way, or I'll do this, or I'll do that to get around it, to circumvent it. We just need to be cautious. This is not you being punished. This is the MLS with the potential to be shut down.
Yeah.
That's a good point, and that's something to like when you say that, like you realize, oh crap, how big of a deal this is. Like you said, the copycat lawsuits. That's huge. Like Texas should have never, in my opinion, my opinion, we should have never been a part of this, right? But it was all copycats that we just jumped on board, right? But that's a really good point. Like if we are the first ones that are like letting people get away with crap, they will make an example of us.
Yeah.
So that does make me get, because I'll be honest, at first when you're like, hey, first time go, huge fine. I was like,
so let me say something to that.
But you make a good point.
Let me say something to that. And I'm no names and nothing like that. Over the time frame where we've sat, and I've sat in the seat, we've used board discretion and common sense with all these fines, right? I feel, right? Even to the point where clear cooperation, which is $1,000 immediate fine. Well, we've had a situation and it may be questionable, and they didn't get the full extent of the fine, okay? Because we used common sense. We talked, we had a conversation, but we just couldn't let it go. But it wasn't the full $1,000. I don't see that being anything different than here, than not have a conversation. If it is violated, we have the rule out there, but on top of the rule, it's not like we don't talk. Right. It's not like we don't come to the question and say, okay, and bring people in and have them talk, or have the tribunal, or have all those things in place that's there for people to have, appeals and all this other stuff. That stuff is still in place. with any of the violations. So that's all still there. We just want to make sure that we use that type of discretion on not just this violation, but any violation.
But from the perspective of a member, not somebody that is in a point of leadership, I want to attest to the fact that, number one, if you get fined, you had to work at it, right? You guys have a good staff that will document, identify, and now you have software that will speak out to the fact that you may have put terms that are incorrect. So on that point, now, one of the variables is the fact that truth and honest, the buyer representation or an agreement between both the agent and the party, the customer, before showing the property.
Right.
That's the one that I think is really gray right now,
Yeah.
and it retracts back to when we were dealing with dual agency and when we were dealing with all that category of unrepresented, right? It's a dangerous game right now in the world of our industry that people are looking for a scapegoat. They're looking for somebody to hold accountable. And when, like I said, this morning or on Friday, my wife texted me and said, "Hey, is this real? Like, do we have to have a contract signed before we show a property?" The answer is, if you are a realtor that has been obliged by the fact that we have settled an agreement, you do. Now, if you're not, if you're a real estate agent in the state of Texas, you don't have to follow the same guidelines. And we need to be conscious of the fact that that needs to be relevant, that if you are a realtor, you have to follow these guidelines. You get the protections along with the downsides of being part of that trade organization.
Yeah, when you talk about the gray areas, to me the gray areas on this is really, as far as the MLS is concerned, was us having to police it. Because to us, we were thinking, how are we going to police it? I mean, what are the brokers going to say? It's like we're getting into their business now, right? And it's, so, we had to think long and hard, and we involved our attorney a lot through all of this, the process. And he just verified, said, no, yeah, you're in charge. You as the MLS are going to be responsible for this and police it. So the way we look at it is very simple, like let's say closing statements. We don't ask for every single closing statement, right, for you to provide that. It's only if something comes up, if somebody calls us up and mentions something about it, then when we have to research it, then we're going to ask you for a copy of it. We see this the same way. It's going to be somebody like a whistleblower, somebody's going to say something, hey, they don't have a buyer's representation written agreement, and we're going to have to call up and say, hey, you need to present it to us so we can review that. But one thing I asked the attorney is, when we talked about leniency on this, he just said, look, if somebody brings a suit towards you or they find that you're breaching your agreement, he says, then what's easier for me is if I'm going to defend you all, is what you have in place. It's a policy you have in place. And if it doesn't have any teeth, he said it's going to be harder for us to go because it's going to look like you purposely made it easy where somebody will just say, okay, I'll pay the fine and just keep on doing it.
So for the purpose of education, since people probably go watch this, I want to say that
Probably.
we're
I'm going to hold that accountable to you because of that probably, yeah.
So, just to be clear, we took this as we ain't trying to chase this rabbit down the hole.
Yeah.
Okay? It's based on what's reported. All right? So let's really clear that. And, there's no one at the staff, there's no one on this board that's going to start, hey, let's go look for this. It's going to be the people that's going to come out there and do that, right? And going to whistleblow, right?
Which is going to happen.
Which is going to happen, right? We know that.
Well, you
So
do it now
one-
with Clear
People
Corporation.
go after, and they
That's
go after
great.
success. Right?
Hold a timer on their phone tomorrow.
But once it's reported, it's simple as, I want to make sure we're clear, that individual, that member has 2 business days, right? To turn in a written agreement, right? And when that written agreement is turned in, I'm never gonna see it. Only people's gonna see it is the MLS staff.
Yeah, it's totally
And-
confidential.
I just want to make sure that's clear. Even when we've had violations with listening groups, stuff like that, I don't ever see it. And then when I do see something that's redacted, it's all this other stuff, and we just make sure the signatures or whatever it has to be. But I don't think people know that aspect of it, that is the MLS president and
They just
the
think you're
people-
going after money.
No,
I really appreciate you saying that. So
So-
at the end of the day, on my end, right, as the least impressive realtor in any room in the staff, right? Like, what it comes down, I'm just the population.
You're a realtor?
I'm just, it's shockingly, right? Sometime now, but yeah, what it comes down to is, it does feel that way. And why is perception? My perception is my reality, right? My perception is like, man, it feels like we're just trying to get $1,000 out of somebody. But I like to hear you say that, because it's like, look, we're not trying to get you, but we have to set these things in motion. Number one, so we're not the ones that are made example of. Because the last thing I want, as the below average realtor in El Paso, is to have El Paso be made the example of.
Yeah.
Right? So I appreciate that, and I'm glad I hear that. And then the thing too is like, look, we're not here for that. We're giving you options to unscrew yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Basically is what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
And I don't want to. I'm just telling you the stuff that we talked about. Again, we're drinking beer, trying to have to figure it out.
Relaxing, man.
So I think people need to know our conversations went from everywhere. From okay, if someone just turned something in, they signed it, did it themselves. I'm not condoning that. I'm not saying that. You know, we don't.
Yeah.
We don't.
That is
No,
an,
no,
that
and-
is an
You know,
agreement.
and I'm not saying that's what people should do or not. I'm just saying it. We don't know.
Yeah.
You know, and from that aspect of it, unless something's put out there that somebody forged something like that, and I hate to even put this out on tape, but it's the facts. It's the facts that we don't know. So it's like,
Well, guys,
okay,
here
you know,
we had this conversation this morning. I told my entire team that very simply, guys, this is on you, right? And here's the category. And they brought up, hey, what about the person that's not requesting it? And I said, with explicit clarity, that, guys, if they don't ask for it, that's on them.
Yeah.
It's not on you. By you asking for it, you are following the rule. Now, let me go back 3 steps here. Colorado is throwing a kink in this whole thing, right? The state of Colorado's association and the state of Colorado's licensing authority are currently throwing a big old kink in the middle of this entire process, because the state of Colorado licensing authority is saying that they are questioning whether this is good for consumers, right? So this is the other part. Today is the rule. Tomorrow, we don't know what the rule is.
That's
And we
right.
need to be conscious of that part, that things can change.
Right.
And that's why you need to be addressing these
Yes.
types of things, whether it's listening to us, whether it is reaching out to your broker, whether it is simply joining those educational seminars to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Because I asked this question in that training last week. I asked everybody in the room, how many of you have shown a buyer a house without a buyer rep in the last month?
Yeah.
Every one of them answered with a raise of hand.
Sure.
Because that's what they did. Now it's changed.
Yeah.
You and I have been in the business for a long time. Nick's been there too. At the end of the day, seller's disclosures weren't as big of a deal back in the day. They are tremendously a big deal today, right? Buyer reps. Certain brokerages require, some did not. So some people are guiding into this real easy, some are not.
Right.
It is just the concept of you need to be surrounded by either a good support system
Right.
or a good broker that's going to help you be supportive through this.
Listen, to me, we've got to quiet the critics, because the critics are going out there and saying, talking about realtors, about, we're just like shysters, we're coming in here, we're doing all these underhanded stuff.
They just think you're buying a new car.
Yeah, and this to me is, used car. So this to me is, I tell this every time that we have our new member orientation, and they have a lot of questions. They're just coming into the business, so they're kind of freaking out. But to me, I see this as an opportunity, guys. I see it more as an opportunity. It's going to make us better at what we do. The transparency is going to be great. You're always going to have bad actors, but they're going to get weeded out. I'm telling you, they're going to get weeded out over time. And there's a reason, I think, that they started this August 17th, and it ain't final till November 26th, because they're going to look and see and be studying us to see what we're doing and how are we handling things, or those bad actors, let's say, and are we taking action against it? And the answer is going to be yes, but I think we're going to get better and better at what we do. People are going to really understand the value, the true value that you bring as a realtor, professional realtor. These things are complex. And once you start outlining everything you're going to do for them, especially on the buyer side, they're going to be like, you know what? One, I don't totally understand this, and the others, I don't have the time. I don't have the time, and I'd rather have a professional do this. I mean, I'm not going to go into the chances of me going into any litigation or lawsuit without an attorney are slim to none.
Yeah.
And it's the same way it's going to be, I feel, for the realtors. You're not going to go into a real estate transaction.
Let me ask you a question though. All right, and I know y'all ask those questions, but when you saw the change on the, new agreement that came out for its listing agreement, new agreement that came out with the buyer written agreement, when I saw it, I was like, that's pretty good.
I agree.
I was like, this is totally fine.
Zero, not an
You
issue.
know,
is what it
Yeah,
is. It's not-
no fine, no, nothing from me.
I saw it as a liberation, the fact that we weren't restricted no longer by a term being listed in a separate area. Right?
Well,
We can now charge what we feel as agents
Yeah.
we're worth.
It is free, and that's the other thing, is like, where it was before was like, and I mean, I guess at the end of the day, right, like, now, the people who are doing the right thing, which is what we all should have been doing, it's not gonna affect us at all. It's the people that are kind of going fly by night, like, hey, my aunt's uncle's roommates from college is a realtor, maybe you should let them list your property. And they're gonna kind of go there with their iPhone and take a, those are the kind of people that are gonna get affected by this, because they're not getting buyer's agreements, they're not getting all that extra stuff.
And
They're not doing it.
And to your point, we sat down in May at the legislative meetings, and I felt good, like, okay, hey, we're in Texas, we're blessed to be in Texas,
Yeah.
because there's some
Absolutely.
states, they don't even have a buyer rep.
No.
You know, haven't really played this out, you know? And that's really interesting, to sit in the room and sit there and like, oh, no, we don't even have one, you know? And we was like, wow.
Well, like I said, Texas shouldn't be a part of this.
No.
But I mean, at the end of the day, like, Texas is like, we got.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think
Yeah.
our agents here know that.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
think they know across the country,
But-
there's other states that don't have stuff that's in place like this.
Yeah.
And true. So Texas did the right thing. I've been out thinking about Paso's doing a great thing. And just real quick, I mean, I love what you guys are doing right now. You guys are constantly putting out education that is real good education. Like, you show up, like, the property taxes and all this kind of stuff. Man,
I think we
grew up
should
really
drink to
like
that
this.
to Tony.
No, I truly do. I say this all the time. Andrew and I say something like,
Tony's been kicking ass.
Awesome job.
Yeah.
But to that point, right? You can only give so much education. You can lead a horse to water, right?
Correct.
There are we're teaching this class down there at the academy right now. It's
Brokerage class.
Thank you, the brokerage class. But we're doing this and we're having kids. I say kids,
Everybody prior to last October that is going for first renewal has to take 98 plus hours. One of those courses has to be this brokerage, brokerage responsibility. That's a different course. This is brokerage course. This is 30 hours. You haven't had to teach this class.
I haven't.
It is, so guys, just to give you a perception, the principles book is taught over 2 weeks. The brokerage class is the same size book taught in 1 week. It is a ton of content. But that's the problem. Everybody has to take it, and we have had low attendance because of it.
Nobody gets it because everything's broker responsibility. But my point on that is you have all these people come in there, they come to the academy, right? And they're like, hey, what the hell is going on? And you find something, again, I'm not asking who the brokers are. So I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. I'm not. My point is, you can only give so much education out. You can teach your people. You can teach your people. Andrew can teach his people. There are so many people in this town that have no idea what's happening. They don't know why it's happening. All they see is one quick thing, or they hear somebody bitch about it. And it's, you're coming after my money, or you're doing this, or this. And again, perception is reality. The education has to get out there, and we really have to get to the brokers and be like, guys, this is what's happening. There's so many things, and it's not like, hey, we suggest this. Like, no, you have to do it. And now you make a really great point. Like, if we don't have teeth in our response, like, because now that you've been chosen, sorry, you're the sheepdog,
Yeah.
right? You got to come after us.
Yeah.
And that makes sense, because if you don't, we're all screwed. Because the last thing we want is El Paso to have the magnifying lens on us. That's the last thing
Has to be
any of
the
us
example.
want.
Yeah.
100%. We won't be but how do we stop that? Right? And it's not just you guys enforcing it.
No.
It's us telling people. Like,
Yes.
and how hard is that? That's one freaking office sales meeting saying, hey guys, don't do it. That's all we ask. Right?
And
And go to one of your classes. Go to one of your things, because it's
Yeah.
just constant.
Yeah.
clear, simple play. Listen, you're going to retain 10% of what you're told, right? You're going to retain 30% of what you write down. And then you're going to retain 50% of what you teach, right? So the problem is that not a lot of people are teaching. So therefore, we have to make sure that it's relevant, it's constant, it's continuous. Because, listen, I've been having this conversation for a long time because I saw this, the writing was on the wall. The question is that I'm still having difficulty with my agents making sure that they implement, because they're afraid of what the unknown is. And they're afraid that says, well, Tony, if I make you sign this and you say no, are you going to go to Nick? That doesn't make you sign this. Right? That's what they're worried about.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that Nick won't be around long enough to be the person that doesn't allow you to sign it. So, I mean, that's the concept that we need to understand, is that, one, it's implemented, right? So August 7th, MLS is going to remove all
August 6th.
August 6th. August 6th, they're removing all the compensation fields, right?
That's
So that will
correct.
no longer be a field in the MLS.
That's correct.
August 17th is when these rules go into play.
Wow.
One other thing.
Yep.
August 7th, the fields are gone. You won't see it.
So you have,
August 6th,
Right.
August 6th, excuse me. On August 6th also, there will be a drop down for concessions. You'll go there and if you're putting a
Yes.
listing in, it's gonna ask you, is the seller offering concessions?
That's intriguing.
It's
We'll
a-
put an amount or
It's,
not?
no, it's a drop down, says yes or no. But if you put yes, you should have gotten that permission to say yes,
Yeah.
right? That should have happened,
Right.
right? If you sit there and say yes, now even though you sit there and you say yes, it doesn't constitute that the agent has to give that concession. It does not. All right, it just says, hey, yes, that they're offering, but everything still has to be negotiated within the contract.
Correct.
All right, but for the agent to be able to sit there and say, and put yes that is being offered, they have to have permission from the seller. So tomorrow, that option will be there. You can put yes, and whatever concessions can may be, whatever, right? It's just going to be a yes.
it's just yes,
Just-
we're not
just
putting
yes.
down what our concession.
You can't go into the remarks or
Okay, I was
comments
there.
and put any.
Just put
It's a
yes.
trap, my Admiral Akbar here, it's a trap.
No, you just
okay.
put yes. So
Yeah.
if I'm an agent, I go to see a listing and I see the drop down and somebody says yes, I'm going to just take what I see and put yes, and then as I go out and I show, I'm gonna, do whatever I need to do and get my buyer rep sign, all this other stuff, and then when I put my offer in, I'm gonna put in whatever concessions I need. You know what I'm saying? I should say what I need, what permission that I have to put in. And I want to make sure I'm clear about that, right? Because still we have to have that permission on the buyer side too,
Yeah.
right? So we have to have that permission too. So, but I want everybody to understand that field will still be there, even though we're dropping the compensation field. I mean, compensation field. You'll still have the concession field where it say yes or no.
And the idea is open the line of communication.
Right.
Like I said,
That's
that's
all I
you see
am.
what it is.
The
We're not
transparency
writing
is
that.
still by transparency.
So in order to get that fine, right, I've got to work for it.
Absolutely.
Is that fair? Is that fair to say that? Like,
Yeah,
I can't
because-
like, hey man, I just always did it that way, so that's, because I think that's a lot of realtors.
I'm gonna say that on the buyer side, on the agreement between
Okay.
parties,
There we go.
No, that's-
the agreement between parties, I think that's the one that you don't have to work towards. That's the one that
It's not in the MLS to begin
I think complacent realtors will put us in a bind because they're not going to hold the accountability of the requirements. So yes, the compensation one, I think you have to legitimately.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because it sounds so, like I was saying before, like the perception should be like, they're just trying to screw me for more money, right? And I don't know if you guys, I know you guys, I know that's not the case.
No,
I know it's not the case,
and
but
that's
my
not
point
what
is,
I'm
it's like, it's how.
Tony
many
does want a
members-
bonus this year.
Yeah, obviously, but I'm not here. But
They're paying me big bucks.
travel, but the point is like, in order
No,
for me to
that's
get
wrong. That's not.
Yeah. No, but for me to get fined, I almost have to want to get fined. Would you agree with that, or is it like, could I accidentally just stumble like this is the way I always did it?
Well, yeah,
The way I always did it's no longer an option.
No, yeah.
Would you agree with that?
When people
Yeah.
say, man, it's $1,000, I said, no, it's super high. I said, no. I said, no violation, it's zero fine. But here's the other thing, and Brian hit a little bit on it. Again, going down that alley, if we're looking at to try to generate non-dues revenue or anything like that. Here's the thing, we're being proactive also with the system, and y'all kind of touched on this. So we're going to be able to, one, as always, after the fact, meaning post, is look and see if there's anything out there to find any violation. So it's going to be hard to get past
Well,
it.
and Flex
But the
MLS
other-
makes it hard
Yes,
to
but
break
the other
rules.
thing that Flex has done and really improved on is the constraint process. So the constraint process, we're going to be able to put in these words like incentive, compensation, and all that. So it will trigger it as you're typing in, and then it's going to let you. You're not going to be able to go forward and actually enter the listing. So we're trying to help you to not get fined by putting those constraints in as well. Now, words like people like
Bonus.
just bonus room,
rooms, yeah.
So bonus by itself, yeah, but bonus room, unless we start changing our terminology. But those things will flag, and then we'll end up seeing it on the back side of it. But you got to be careful of that.
So even talk about even tomorrow when it goes in place, get flagged, not fined. Nobody's getting fined tomorrow.
No.
Nobody's getting fined until August 17th.
Correct.
So if there's any timeline to police and have conversations or educations that August 6th to the 17th, I know that sounds short, right?
That's your trial period.
Yeah.
It is short.
Pretty awesome though.
But from the August 6th to the 17th, you know, this is kind of the catch up, clean up time.
And
frame.
keep in mind that the MLS's
Correct.
team has already been
That's
doing
what we're
this,
doing
'cause
on the
I've
back
already-
end in that week, is we're already gonna be calling you. Look, if you have an amount in the compensation field, you don't have to worry about it, go take it out. No, it's gonna be gone anyway. So there's no issue there. It's whatever you might have in remarks on the confidential side. And that's what we'll be working, the team will be working ahead of time, starting to try to look at all this stuff ahead of time to see if we can pick it up between now and the 17th as much as we can. But we need you all. I mean, we've got, almost 2,600 listings in the MLS right now, so, you know, we need your assistance, you know, don't just ignore it.
And that's
we
an
need
education thing.
broker
Yeah,
assistance.
well, yeah, and it is broker
Education.
system.
We have to get out there, we have to tell the agents, and the agents aren't paying attention, right? The majority of agents.
So if you are out there right now, ask your broker, ask those conversations, come out to the training that they're gonna have. You know, Travis Kessler is a great resource, and he's gonna bring his staff to present that category of understanding, because this is not a Trella thing. And I wanna make sure that, because a lot of people are misconstruing this, this is not law. This is a rule
Yeah.
applied by a settlement. Okay, so make sure that you understand this is TAR or TR, not. Yeah, everybody sees you get another beer. This is not TA. This is not TR. This is going to be the category of understanding that this is simply, if you are a realtor,
Yeah.
you need to follow these rules.
Yeah, and you know, and you mentioned to the DOJ that this is critical. You know, we already had an incident that's not related to this, but the DOJ came back in after there had already been a decision, right, with NAR. But we need to watch out for that, because let's not help the DOJ to come up with something against us,
They don't
guys.
need any help.
They don't need any help. I mean, let's just fly straight, get it going, get with your brokers. Brokers totally encourage you to get with your teams. You need to get with them and really help it. And if there's something the association can help you with, my phone line's open. You know, come on in, let me see whatever we can do. I work with the MLS board, with the association board, and we'll see what we can do, because we're in this together. We're one big family.
Well, and as exhilarating as teaching at the academy is, Nick teaches, I teach, and Ben
I
teaches.
got a better review than we do. Oh, then,
Yeah. No. On that note, though, we, I think, teach for the purpose of knowledge retainment as well. Like, you learn new things as you go through that book regularly. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah.
So
100%.
put yourself in those situations. Teach other people. When you decide to teach somebody else, you're going to learn a lot of information on how to teach others.
And I would say that the craziest, in the times that we're in, like when we started back in the day, when our Uncle Dan started, he was like, hey, real estate's changed more in the last 5 years than it has in the last 50 years. Every year since, since COVID, every year it's been ridiculous, right? Like every year it's a new job, basically, right? But things are changing so fast. Like with all this kind of stuff, like you've got to stay on top of that. Like contracts are changing all the time. Like what we have to say all the time, it's constantly changing. So you might have that realtor or that broker even that gets into their comfort zone, right? Like, hey, this is how we do this. This is what I teach. This is the way it's always been. The way it's always been is this is not how it is anymore, right? And that's one of those things. And not only that, if you do it the way it's always been,
You're going to be in trouble.
you're gonna get in a lot of trouble, and you're gonna get a lot of people in trouble. And that's the biggest one. It's like,
Yes.
look, you've got to adapt.
Yeah.
We cannot be like, hey, this is how it was. This is
No.
how it is. This is it. There's the principle, and then there's the model. And the model's got to change all the time, especially in the current affairs, right? Would you guys agree with that?
Oh yeah, no, we don't need people thinking, it's all right, this is going to go away. This is not going away.
Yeah.
This is not going away. And if we're not careful, it could be worse.
Because it has one variable that we forget about and that we don't bring up enough. And I'm not a huge fan of lawyers, and I know your wife is a lawyer, so I want to be nice and polite with this. But at the end of the day, lawyers are going to see violations as opportunities.
That's correct.
Okay?
Very
And we need to be cautious about that, because those opportunities will cost us tons of, and I know that you mentioned at the very beginning that this is not going to cost us, but at the end of the day, I don't know if I'm crazy on this, but I look at the numbers. And cash on hand from the National Association of Realtors does not equal the amount that they just settled for.
Oh no.
Which means we're going to have to figure out how to pay the other $300 million
Sure.
on that settlement.
Oh yeah.
And again,
That's going to
Who's
be
making
conscious.
that money?
Yeah. So we're going to have to be conscious of this. And we need to be conscious of all the other details. So let's just make sure that, one, you're keeping yourself top of knowledge. Two, you're staying top of mind on all the things. And three, our director, Ms. Brenda, is telling us that we are on time. So with that, I kind of just want to settle on what kind of things you want to leave everybody with. So start with you, Ben.
If you could give anybody the information they need to take away from this.
I would tell them to look at the MLS, look at Tony, look at the staff of the people. We're trying to do what's best for the association.
For the collective.
For the collective association. You get people in the room and the whole idea behind this.
So you're not the bad guys.
No, we're trying to see what's best for the association. I'm an open book. If you call me and ask me, I'll tell you my thoughts, of what I see.
I've tested that out, and it is true.
So, and I would want them to walk away from this knowing that that's what we're trying to do, and for our association to breathe and live on past this and thrive in it. All right, so that's what we're trying to do, and bring value to them. We're not trying to take it away. That's not what we're trying to do. We don't want to run people away. No. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring people together and understand that this is the betterment for the association. So that's all I'm saying.
And Ben, just to clarify, you do sell houses.
I do.
And you are a realtor.
I am.
So anything that benefits the rest of the agents benefit you as well.
It does. Yes.
Anything that doesn't benefit them doesn't benefit you either.
Correct.
Okay, just making sure we're clear on
And
that.
I'm sure I would probably have some people violate this rule. But as much as I educate people, and I try to, but I'm sure I'll probably have somebody do it. But I'm going to, I have to do it.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
Tony, what do you got to share?
On that, it's just keep in mind when it talks about this is your board of directors, this is your association. It's your MLS. These are elected officers that you elect to sit in these positions. So they're out there looking for all of our best interests. It's in just as big an interest to them as it is to you. So they're always out there looking for you. They, like I said, even when we decided and we talked about the fines, it was not an easy task. There was a lot of opinions in there. They didn't like it. But in the end, our attorneys chime in and say, guys, this isn't an option. You have to do this. You've got to do this, and if you don't, the repercussions could be much greater than what they are now. So to me, the one thing I want to leave everybody with is have faith in your board. Ourselves. Remember, this is your association. I say that all the time. It's not our association. It's your association. So we're always acting in your best interest. If you feel there's something you don't agree with, then try out. Volunteer to serve on the board of directors and get on the board
or
in the committees. We need that participation. There's a lot of great things happening in El Paso right now. I mean, even on the political side. I mean, our government affairs committee. I mean, this is a huge election year this year. A lot of candidates. I mean, you're talking about a changeover of 5 city council with the mayor and then his city manager. I mean, that's big, and we've got a seat at the table because we're interacting more and more. I mean, I love it. I mean, I love what I'm doing here. I love the fact on the property tax, you mentioned it earlier. I want to educate us to where we are educating the public because the state's not doing it and neither is the Central Appraisal District. So we're going to do it as realtors. And if I can help give you all that information, that's what I want to do.
Perfect. Excellent. You want to share anything last?
No, I'm. All I would say is if tomorrow we're having the education, show up to this guy's education. It is good. And as a realtor who shows up to some stuff, I'm that guy, right? The stuff you're walking away, I'm like, you know what? I learned something. I got something out of that, and I truly appreciate it. And I really appreciate you guys showing up and telling us this stuff because, I needed to hear that, right? Because again, perception is reality. You're coming from my money, but you're not.
No.
Look, we've got to have teeth. We've got to have. I really appreciate you guys explaining this and pulling back, coming to the blanket on this kind of stuff and letting us know. Thank you.
Well, thank y'all for having us.
It wasn't an easy decision. People came at us hard. So, came at me. I feel like
But like you said, right? You're going to these committees and stuff. Like you're going in and they're saying, like, look, we've got to be serious, and that's one of those things. It's a national level, right? The last thing we want is to be like, well, you know what? El Paso
Yeah.
didn't give a
We
crap.
don't want our head on the pike
No.
as you're walking into town.
No.
Right? We don't want to be the example. We don't want to be the one that's the deterrent for everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, so take a step. And that's what it comes down to, right? Like, get the education out there. Brokers, come on, tell your realtors, see what's going on, because half of them just like, well, I don't know. Like we were saying, at the academy, they come in and like, tell us what's happening, because no one is telling us what's going on. And I'll tell you right now, they got so, that was my point. So we go in there, and I'm like, hey guys, well, let's talk about brokers, right? Like, what do you want to do? And they're like, you know what I'd like to do? Tell us what's happening with this damn lawsuit. And it's like, guys, okay, what is your question? I'm not supposed to talk about it, but what are your questions, right? Like, what do you have? They're being told nothing, and that's the problem, right? Like,
So one thing we didn't mention, that I know people do it, right now those videos are popping up when you
Yeah.
log in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at them.
Yeah, don't
Yes.
ignore them.
Don't ignore them.
Yeah.
Watch them.
Yeah.
There's one about compensation. There's
And
one
then
about
share.
data share. Watch them, and it's gonna tell you a lot. So,
Guys,
And our newsletters.
huge.
It's constantly.
no, you're right. It's education. It's that simple. It's like, find out what's going on in the current affairs, because damn, it's happening weekly. It's not
Yeah, every Monday.
last 5 years over 50 years. It's the last 5 weeks over the last 50 years.
Right.
It's how fast it's changing, and we've got to stay on point. Especially if we're leading a team, leading a brokerage, leading MLS. We have to be putting out the information, and if we're not, we're gonna get hooked.
Well, that's the task that you put on us, on our association. That's what we're here to do. But I'm shocked at how many people always tell us, oh, I have y'all's newsletter blocked. I was like, what are you blocking us? You need to block us. It's not about just these little ads and stuff. There's a lot of good information, you know. Forget about the past, and maybe it was like that a lot in the past, but a lot has changed. I promise you, in this last year,
That's
a
true.
lot has changed, and I think you'll be pleased with what's going on now.
And that is a great way to cap. And guys, once again, this is the Growl Hour where we enjoy. Nick enjoys a few more than everybody else. But at the end of the day, guys, this is
These are rigging themselves.
this is for your benefit, and we hope that it was a benefit today. So,
Yep.
guys, thank you.
Yes,
Appreciate it.
No, thank
Truly
you guys.
appreciate it.
Really
I
appreciate
appreciate
it.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.